attention. Incredible.
Their company is called Phil and DeBlanc Multimedia Enterprise.
Yeah, I saw that.
Do you know how to pronounce that?
Fill in the blank.
Fill in the blank.
Oh, I see what they did there.
It's perfect, right?
All right, welcome back everyone to another deep dive. You know, the internet, especially social media, is this incredible mix of random thoughts and deep conversations all smashed together.
It really is.
Today, we're going deep on one of those, a really short piece of writing, but even though it's short, it brings up some really big, heavy topics like trauma and who's accountable for what,
Yeah.
and how we all see the world so differently. So let's see if we can unpack this, figure out what the writer is trying to say, and maybe even connect it to some bigger conversations happening online and in the real world. Sound good?
Definitely.
Okay, so right off the bat, the writer hits us with this line. The hood is traumatized. All caps, 2 exclamation points. It's a strong statement.
Really powerful. And they tie it right to descendants of American Chattel Slavery and descendants of Western Colonialism.
Okay, so whoa, right.
Yeah.
Immediately jumps into some really heavy history.
Well, you know that phrase, the hood is traumatized, it's not just an observation.
Right.
It points to this concept called generational trauma.
Generational trauma.
Where the effects of something terrible like slavery or colonialism, they don't just disappear.
Yeah.
They can ripple down through families and communities for generations.
So even if someone wasn't directly enslaved or colonized themselves,
Exactly.
they might still be carrying the weight of that history.
Yeah, because trauma can impact things like mental health, how people relate to each other, how they see the world. There's a lot of research on this, especially in communities that have faced systemic oppression and violence. It's like the trauma gets woven into the fabric of their lives.
Yeah, that's heavy.
Yeah.
And it kind of sets the stage for the writer's next point, which I got to admit threw me off a little. They ask, why should those who feel most victimized and oppressed be held accountable?
Yeah, that's a challenging statement. It really makes you think about who we hold accountable for what. What does accountability even mean in this context?
Right. And it seems like the writer is pushing back against this idea that because someone has been marginalized or victimized, they should automatically shoulder the responsibility for fixing things.
And it makes you think about the power dynamics at play, right?
Exactly.
Because who gets to decide who's accountable and for what? And are we overlooking larger systemic issues that contribute to these cycles of victimization and blame?
Totally. And then the writer throws in this whole other layer. Idle minds who accepted the idolized idle lies.
That line makes me think, what lies is the writer talking about here?
Right. Are these lies something specific, or is it more about this broader sense of accepting a version of reality that might not be the whole truth?
I think it could be both, honestly. There are plenty of examples of misinformation, propaganda, things that get repeated so often, they start to seem like truth.
Yeah, and those things can be really hard to shake. Once an idea takes root, it can be really difficult to see it from a different perspective.
Absolutely. And it can be especially tricky when those lies are coming from sources we trust, institutions, the media, even our own families.
Right. And then the writer goes on to say, I'm tired of pretending America's all right in the head. I'm tired of pretending the church is always right in the head. It's like they're calling out this pressure to just pretend everything's okay.
Yeah. It gets at this pressure to conform, right?
Right.
To not rock the boat. And I think a lot of people, especially those who have felt marginalized or silenced, they can relate to that feeling of being told to just go along with things, even when it doesn't feel right.
It's that feeling of having to swallow your own truth because you're afraid of what will happen if you speak up.
Yeah. And I think that can be incredibly damaging, to feel like you can't be honest about your own experiences or question the status quo.
Totally. And I think that's part of what makes the writer's next line so interesting. They ask, what does a spell look like IRL? IRL in real life.
Yeah. That's a really intriguing question. It makes you wonder what kind of magic they're talking about. Is it about actual, supernatural spells? Or is it more metaphorical?
Right. Because a spell, in a way, is about influence. Right.
Yep.
Using words or actions to create a certain outcome.
Exactly. So maybe the writer is asking us to look closer at the ways we influence each other, the ways power operates in the real world, what are the unseen forces that shape our reality?
That makes a lot of sense. It's like they're saying, look beyond the surface. There's a deeper level to all this.
Yeah.
And then to wrap it all up, they throw in these hashtags, hashtag for the culture and hashtag Philharmonics.
Right. It's almost like a little glimpse into their identity and the communities they're connected to.
Yeah, because hashtags are more than just labels, right?
They're like signposts helping us navigate the vastness of online spaces.
Exactly. They help us find our people, our tribes.
And in this case, it suggests a connection to cultural identity, maybe even a specific movement or group.
So, to kind of bring it all together, we have this writer who's wrestling with generational trauma, questioning who we hold accountable, and pushing us to look beyond the surface of things. It's a lot to pack into such a short piece of writing.
Yeah, but that's the thing about the internet, right?
What's that?
It's this place where these really complex personal thoughts and feelings can collide with these big societal issues.
And I think that's what makes this deep dive so interesting. It's not just about understanding this one writer's perspective. It's about recognizing that they're probably speaking for a lot of people who are feeling similar things.
Exactly. And that brings us to our final thought for you. If this piece resonated with you, if it sparked something in you, where do you see these themes playing out in your own life or community? It's a question worth pondering.
Totally. Because the conversation's happening online. They're not just happening in some digital echo chamber. They're reflecting real-world anxieties, real-world struggles. And I think it's important to pay attention to that, to listen to those voices, and to ask ourselves, how can we use these conversations to create a more just and understanding world?
Absolutely.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep thinking deeply.
Their company is called Phil and DeBlanc Multimedia Enterprises.
Yeah, I saw that.
Do you know how to pronounce that?
Fill in the blank.
Fill in the blank.
Oh, I see what they did there.
It's perfect, right?